The night my mother-in-law finally said it out loud, she was passing the bread basket. "We just worry about you too," she said, her voice gentle the way a knife is gentle before it cuts. "Grayson has such a demanding career, and you're still doing your little freelance thing." My little freelance thing. My husband squeezed my knee under the table. Not in a comforting way, in a please don't way. So I smiled. I reached for the bread, and I said nothing. That was a Tuesday in October, 2 years before everything changed. Before the night I sat at that same table in that same chair and watched my mother-in-law's face go from pity to confusion to something I'd never seen from her before. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Renata, and I have spent the better part of 4 years being the wrong kind of woman for this family. Not wrong in any dramatic way. I wasn't reckless or loud or difficult. I was just quiet, careful. The kind of woman who keeps her ambitions close because she learned early that sharing them with the wrong people is the fastest way to have them taken apart. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. My dad drove a city bus for 31 years. My mom cleaned offices at night and took community college classes in the morning. We weren't poor in the way people make movies about, but we were the kind of family where a broken water heater meant a real conversation at the kitchen table, where vacations were road trips to my aunt's house in Indiana, where you learned not to want things loudly because wanting things loudly just reminded everyone of what you didn't have. I was good at school in the way that doesn't get you noticed. Steady, consistent, the kind of student teachers wrote hardworking on report cards rather than gifted. I got into Ohio State on partial scholarship. I worked 20 hours a week at a coffee shop and took out loans for the rest. I studied business. I had a vague idea that I wanted to work in marketing. I liked the puzzle of it, figuring out why people want things, what makes them choose one thing over another. I graduated. I got a job at a small firm. I was good at it. Not spectacular, just good. Reliable. And then I met Grayson at a friend's rooftop party in Chicago, where I'd moved for work. And he was funny and warm, and he looked at me like I was saying something interesting even when I was just talking about traffic. We dated for 2 years. We got married in a small ceremony in the Smoky Mountains because that's what we both wanted. What I didn't fully understand until after the honeymoon was the weight of marrying into a family where what you do is the first and sometimes only thing that matters. The Harmon family is not wealthy in the old money, inherited estate sense. They're the newer kind of American comfortable, the kind built over 2 generations through engineering degrees and smart real estate, and the kind of discipline that gets passed down like a genetic trait. My father-in-law designed water treatment systems for municipalities. My mother-in-law, Beverly, had been a hospital administrator for 20 years before she retired. Grayson's older brother, Douglas, was a litigation attorney in Atlanta. His wife, Pamela, ran a nonprofit that had been featured in Forbes. And then there was Grayson, who taught high school physics and genuinely loved it, which his family respected but didn't quite understand. And then there was me. I worked at a mid-sized marketing agency. I had a normal salary. I lived in a normal apartment before we bought our house, which was a normal house in a normal suburb of Chicago. I didn't have a title that sounded impressive. I didn't have a career arc that made sense to people who thought in trajectories. The first Thanksgiving I spent with them, Beverly asked me 3 times what exactly I did. Not because she forgot, because each time I explained it, the answer didn't land the way she wanted it to. "So you write copy?" she finally said. "Sometimes. It's more strategy. I work with clients on positioning, messaging, campaign architecture." "Oh," she said, "like advertising." "Sure," I said, "like advertising." I watched her file me away somewhere. Not malicious about it, just sorted. I was the wife who did advertising. Not a threat, not an asset, not particularly interesting. I smiled. I passed the cranberry sauce. I kept my mouth shut about the thing I'd been building on the side for almost a year. It had started as an accident, the way most real things do. A former colleague had reached out asking if I could help her cousin's bakery with their social media. Just a favor. I spent a weekend building them a content strategy, wrote a month's worth of posts, redesigned their Instagram grid. 2 weeks later, she called me and said her cousin's Saturday revenue had doubled. I told her that was the algorithm, probably. She said, maybe, but could I do the same for her friend's boutique? I did it again. Then again for a physical therapy practice in Naperville. Then for a restaurant in Logan Square that had been open 3 years and never once posted consistently online. I charged almost nothing that first year. I was learning. I was figuring out if this was repeatable or if I'd just gotten lucky a few times. It was repeatable. By the end of that first year, I had 11 clients, a system, and a quiet certainty that this was something real. I hadn't told Grayson yet. Not because I didn't trust him, I did. Completely. But because I wanted to understand what I had before I tried to explain it to anyone else. I wanted to hold it in my hands and know its shape before I showed it to the world. I also knew that the moment I said anything, the well-meaning questions would start. Is it sustainable? What about benefits? Have you thought about what happens if? And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. So I worked in the evenings, after dinner, after Grayson fell asleep reading. I sat at my desk in the spare room, and I built something. I named it Fox Hollow Creative. Small name. No particular reason, except that foxes are clever, and I'd grown up near a hollow in the woods behind my grandmother's house where I used to hide when I needed to think. By the end of year 2, I had 23 clients. I'd hired 2 contractors, a designer in Portland named Josephine and a copywriter in Austin named Max. My revenue was more than my day job salary. I still hadn't told anyone. Looking back, I understand why that seems strange. I understand why someone on the outside might look at that and say, what were you hiding and why? The honest answer is that I wasn't hiding it the way you hide something shameful. I was protecting it the way you cup a match in the wind. The people in my life, the ones at holiday dinners and Sunday phone calls, had a fixed idea of who I was. And I had learned, slowly and then all at once, that fixed ideas are hard to update, that sometimes it's easier and safer to just let people believe what they already believe until the thing you've built is too solid to be talked out of. I knew Beverly's opinion of me. I knew Douglas thought Grayson had married below his potential. I knew that Pamela, despite being perfectly pleasant to my face, had once told Grayson at a family gathering, which she'd made the mistake of repeating, that she hoped I'd find my footing. I had found my footing. I was building something with it. They just didn't get to know yet. The situation with my brother-in-law's new girlfriend started the December of my 3rd year. Douglas had been dating someone for about 6 months. Her name was Tara, and she arrived at the Harmon family Christmas in a car I recognized as a current year BMW 5 Series, wearing a blazer that cost more than my first month's rent, and trailing the specific energy of someone who has decided, without yet meeting you, exactly where you rank. She was a venture capitalist. She'd been part of 3 startup exits. She was 34, and she had the kind of self-assurance that comes from spending your whole professional life in rooms where everyone is trying to impress you. She was not unkind, exactly. She was just relentlessly evaluating. Dinner that year was at Beverly and my father-in-law Walter's house in Barrington. A beautiful house, warm and well-decorated, the kind of place that smelled like a candle that cost $40. There were 12 of us around the table. Walter carved the roast. Beverly had made her good scalloped potatoes. Grayson was telling a story about one of his students that was actually funny. It was going fine until Tara asked me what I did. I told her I worked in marketing. Agency side or in-house, she asked. I've done both, I said. Mostly I run my own thing now. I don't know why I said that. I hadn't meant to. It came out before the careful part of my brain caught up. Tara tilted her head. Like a consultancy. Something like that. What's your focus? Small to mid-sized businesses. Brand positioning. Digital strategy. Content. She nodded slowly, the way people nod when they're being polite about something they've already assessed. That's a tough space, she said. Lots of competition. Hard to scale without a real differentiator. It can be, I said. What's your revenue model? Retainer-based or project? Both, I said. Mostly retainer. And you're solo? I have contractors. She made a small sound. Not dismissive, exactly. Just measured. like she was deciding whether this was worth the continued conversation. Beverly, who had been listening, chose this moment to add, "Renata has always been entrepreneurial." She said it the way you'd say someone has always been a dreamer. Fond. Slightly concerned. Douglas smiled into his wine. "It's hard to build something sustainable without outside capital," Tara said. "Have you looked at funding options? Even a small seed round could help you." "I'm not looking for investment," I said. She blinked, like that was unexpected. "I bootstrapped it," I said. "I like owning it entirely." There was a small pause. Then she nodded again and turned to ask Pamela something about her nonprofit's new initiative, and I was sorted. Filed away. The little marketing consultancy lady who didn't want real money involved. Grayson looked at me sideways. I smiled at him. He didn't know yet how much entirely meant. After Christmas, Tara became a fixture. Douglas was serious about her, and by the spring she was at every family dinner, every birthday, every occasion. She wasn't cruel to me. She was something more subtle and in some ways harder to argue with. She just consistently, gently treated my work like a hobby that had gotten a little out of hand. She had opinions about what I should be doing differently. She shared them freely. I should be niching down. I should be building toward an exit. I should be thinking about what the business looked like in 5 years, whether I had a real growth strategy or if I was just trading time for money, which she said the way people say it, like it's the worst thing you can do with your life. I listened. I nodded. I did not say I know exactly what my business looks like in 5 years, because I've been running financial models on it for 2 years, and the projection is very good, and I've already turned down 2 acquisition inquiries because I'm not ready yet. I did not say any of that. I smiled and passed the salad dressing. But it was wearing on me in a way I hadn't expected, not because she was wrong exactly. She wasn't entirely wrong. Some of her questions were actually useful, which was the irritating part. It was the assumption underneath, the certainty that she understood my situation better than I did, that I was a beginner in need of a mentor rather than someone who had been quietly, methodically building something for 3 years while everyone at this table ate their scalloped potatoes and decided I was decorative. The night it finally shifted, the night I think about when I think about how things change, was an April dinner, 8 months after Tara first appeared. It was a birthday dinner for Walter, my father-in-law, 70 years old. Beverly had made reservations at a restaurant in the city, one of those places with white tablecloths and a sommelier and a prix-fixe menu. Everyone dressed up. It felt celebratory and warm at first. Walter was in a good mood, laughing at his own jokes, which I loved about him. Then dessert came, and Douglas made a toast, and somehow, the way these things happen, the conversation turned to money and business, and Tara mentioned that she was in early conversations with a Chicago-based company called Lakeview Digital Partners about a potential investment. I heard the name, and something went very still inside me. Lakeview Digital Partners had been a client of mine for 14 months. They were one of my anchors, a mid-sized digital marketing firm that had brought me in to revamp their brand positioning before a growth round. We had worked closely together. I knew their leadership team, I knew what they were worth and what they wanted to become. Tara was describing them now, their model, their market, their potential. With the authority of someone doing early diligence. I watched the table. Beverly was listening, impressed. Douglas nodded along. Grayson was cutting his creme brulee, not tracking the conversation. "They're doing interesting things in the B2B content space," Tara said. "The CEO is very sharp. I had lunch with him last week." "Kevin," I said. She stopped, looked at me. "You know Kevin Marsh? He's one of my clients," I said. "Has been for over a year." The table went quiet in a particular way, not loud silence, the kind where everyone recalibrates. "Kevin is your client," Tara said. Less a question than a thing she was testing in her mouth. "Fox Hollow Creative does their brand positioning and content strategy," I said. "We worked together on the identity refresh they launched in January. That's part of what's making them attractive right now, actually. The repositioning changed how they're being perceived in the market." Tara set down her spoon. "I had no idea you worked with companies at that level." "Most of my clients are at that level," I said. Oh, they're getting there. What does your portfolio look like? She asked, and now her voice was different. The measuring tone was gone. Something more careful had replaced it. I told her, not to impress her. I told her because I was tired of being quiet about it, and because Walter's 70th birthday seemed strangely like the right moment to stop. I told her about the client roster, the revenue, the 2 contractors who had become 3 full-time employees in January, the inquiry I'd gotten from an acquisition firm in February that I had declined, the second inquiry in March that I was still considering. The table was very quiet. Beverly had set down her fork. Douglas was looking at me like I had just said something in a language he didn't know I spoke. Grayson had gone still beside me. I felt him looking at the side of my face. We would have a long conversation later, he and I. An honest one, harder than I expected, about why I'd waited so long to tell him, about what keeping that secret had cost us even when I hadn't meant for it to. That conversation would take several weeks, and it would change some things between us, not badly, but permanently, the way real conversations do. I had protected my business from the people at this table, and in doing so I had also, without meaning to, kept my husband at arm's length from something important. That was the part I had to sit with. But that was later. Right then, at the table, Tara looked at me for a long moment. "Fox Hollow Creative," she said slowly. "I've heard of Fox Hollow." "A lot of people have," I said. "I didn't connect it to you." "Most people don't," I said. "I've been okay with that for a while." She nodded. And for the first time since she'd walked into the Harmon family Christmas in her perfect blazer, she looked at me without the careful, calibrated assessment in her eyes. Just looked at me like a person. "You should have told me," she said. "I would have. I know," I said. "That's partly why I didn't." Beverly called me the following week. I almost didn't answer. She talked for a while before she got to the point, asked about the weather, asked about Grayson, asked if we'd tried the new Italian place in Wicker Park. Then she got quiet for a moment and said, "I owe you an apology, Renata." I sat down at my desk. "Okay," I said. "I've been dismissive," she said. "I didn't understand what you were doing, and instead of asking, I just assumed." I waited. "I think I had a picture of you in my head," she said. "And I kept it there instead of looking at what was actually in front of me. That wasn't fair." I thought about the breadbasket, the little freelance thing. 4 years of quiet dinners and careful smiles. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I mean it," she said. "I know," I said. And I think I did. The truth about doing something in silence is that it changes you in ways you don't expect. I thought I was protecting my work, and I was. But I was also, without realizing it, building a habit of smallness, a habit of preemptive apology, shrinking before anyone could ask me to shrink. That habit is harder to unlearn than I expected, even now that there's nothing left to hide. Grayson and I talked about it. Really talked, for the first time the Sunday after Walter's birthday dinner. He wasn't angry. He was something more complicated than angry. He was hurt in the way you're hurt when you realize a person you love has been carrying something alone when they didn't have to. "I knew you were working on something," he said. "I could see it. I just didn't push because I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." "I should have been ready sooner," I said. "Yeah," he said. "You should have." We sat with that for a while. Outside the kitchen window, the neighborhood was doing its regular Sunday things. Someone mowing, a dog barking 2 houses down, the particular light that April has in the Midwest when it finally decides to mean it. "Are you proud of it?" he asked. "What you built?" I thought about it honestly. "Yes," I said, "I really am." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Then I'm proud of it too," he said. "Even if I'm a little mad, I didn't get to be proud of it sooner." That made me laugh. It was the first real laugh I'd had in a week. Fox Hollow Creative is still mine. I still own it entirely, which still matters to me, though the reasons feel different now. Less like armor, more like a fact I'm just comfortable with. We have 7 full-time employees now. I kept the name because I like it and because it's mine and because nobody gave it to me. Tara and I have coffee sometimes. She refers clients occasionally. It's a professional relationship and a polite one, and I've made my peace with the fact that it will probably never be more than that, and that's fine. Not every story needs a transformation. Sometimes someone misjudges you and then stops misjudging you, and that's the whole arc. Beverly comes to dinner now and asks about the business. Real questions, specific ones, about clients and decisions and what I'm working through. I answer them. It's not warm exactly, but it's real, and I've decided that real is enough. The thing I keep coming back to, the thing I'd tell myself 4 years ago if I could, is this: there is a difference between protecting something and hiding it. Protection means you know what you have and you're being careful with it while it grows. Hiding means you've started to believe that what you have isn't worth defending out loud. I lost track of that difference for a while. The habit of quiet became a habit of small, and the hardest part of the last year hasn't been the business. The business is fine. The business is better than fine. It's been learning to stop apologizing for the space I take up. I'm still learning. But I'm not passing the breadbasket and staying quiet anymore. That part, at least, I've figured out. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it actually costs to stay quiet for too long. Not the strategic quiet, the kind where you're protecting something real while it's still fragile, while it still needs room to grow without the wrong hands pulling at it. That kind of quiet has a purpose. I don't regret it entirely. But there's another kind of quiet that sneaks in without you noticing. The kind that starts as protection and slowly becomes a habit of making yourself smaller than you are. That's the one that cost me something. And I don't think I fully understood the difference until I was sitting at a birthday dinner for my father-in-law, hearing Tara describe a company I'd spent 14 months building alongside, and realizing I had to decide, right then, over crème brûlée, whether I was going to keep disappearing or not. What I've come to believe, not from any particular philosophy, but just from living through this, is that actions compound. The good ones and the bad ones both. Every time I let Beverly's little freelance thing slide without correction, I was making a small deposit into an account I didn't want to own. Every time I smiled at Douglas's half glance and let Tara's gentle condescension go unanswered, I was teaching everyone at that table, including myself, that this was acceptable, that I was fine with it, that I agreed with their assessment. I wasn't fine with it, but I acted like I was. And after a while, the distance between how I acted and what I actually knew about myself became its own kind of weight. The work I was doing, building Fox Hollow, developing real systems, hiring real people, turning down acquisition inquiries, that was the intelligence part, the figuring it out, the staying up late, the learning what worked and what didn't through actual failure and actual recovery. That part I had. What I was slow to develop was the courage to let that work exist out loud. Courage isn't the absence of fear about being dismissed. It's deciding that what you've built is worth defending in public, even in front of people who've already made up their minds about you. Rayson was hurt when he found out the full scope of what I'd been carrying alone. I understood it then, and I understand it more now. The strength to protect something doesn't mean much if it prevents the people who actually love you from standing beside it. There's a version of self-reliance that's really just fear in a more flattering outfit. I was wearing that outfit for longer than I'd like to admit. What changed me wasn't the moment at the dinner table, though that mattered. What actually changed me was the Sunday after, sitting in our kitchen with Grayson, the neighborhood going about its ordinary business outside the window and saying out loud for the first time, I'm proud of what I built. Meaning it without qualification, not it's doing okay or it's been going pretty well, just letting it be the true and complete thing that it was. That's the part nobody tells you about building something quietly. The quiet itself can become the problem. You get so used to not claiming it that when it's finally time, the claiming feels almost dangerous. Like if you say it too directly, someone will find a way to take it back. Nobody can take back what you've actually done. That's the part worth remembering. The work is already real. The only thing left to decide is whether you're going to stand next to it.